Oh, great. The BBC. I wonder what the British Broadcasting Corporation's going to tell us this time. Wow, that intro was so bad. That was like something out of my childhood from the 90s. UK open doors. I wonder if they will take a hard and serious look at the effects of uncontrolled, unmitigated, and in many cases encouraged mass migration to one's country. I mean, I'm sure they will have a fair and honest debate that shows both sides of this issue that Britain is currently facing. Not. It's the BBC, what do you expect?
Think immigration's a recent thing. Think again.
No, immigration's definitely not a new thing. However, using caveman depictions to describe immigration really technically is not correct, as I believe at that time period that would have been called migration, as I believe immigration and immigration would only apply to countries, and well, there were no countries in the caveman era.
Because you see, you've got the Celts, the Romans, the Anglo-Saxons and the Vikings, the Normans, the Flemish, the Irish, Black Britons, and Jewish people.
Wow, you put Jews, Black Britons, and Irish people in the same group of people as the Romans and the Vikings. The difference is pretty simple. One group more or less voluntarily came. I mean, I guess the argument could be made that Black Britons came via slavery. But, I mean, all things considered, those groups did not forcefully conquest the British Isles like the Romans or the Vikings did.
Yep, we were multicultural long before curry and carnival. It's in our DNA. There's no such thing as a pure Brit. Despite what some flag wavers would have you believe, the average one is just 36% Anglo-Saxon.
Oh boy, here we go, getting a quick start on this one. This is the problem with, especially people on the left, realizing what makes up a culture or a country. It's not your genetics. That's a really bad way to look at where culture comes from. I mean, you have to go really far to the right to find people on the right who believe that it's your genetics that influence your culture. But this is a common narrative, the claim that, oh, because you're only 1/3 British, therefore you're not actually British. No, the cultures are in the values and the morals of a country and or a society. It's not based on the genetics of a people. You don't have to be 100% pure British to be quote unquote British. You just have to accept British ideals and British values and be willing to live with other people who also accept those values within one country. It's not based on genetics.
Migration did step up after the Second World War, when people arrived from all over the colonies, places like India, the Caribbean, Pakistan, Uganda and Kenya. Then we joined the EU, which meant we could easily move to Paris, Rome, Berlin, Barcelona, and that people there could come here. Some people come fleeing war or poverty, others because we have a better music scene.
Okay, those two groups of people listed as immigrating to Britain after World War II are very distinct groups. The first one, listed from Pakistan, Uganda, India, etc., those came from former British colonies, of which I will point out probably came because when their countries broke away from Britain, they ended up a whole lot worse than when they were under British rule. And a lot of those people chose to come to Britain because it was a lot nicer there and they already had some of the same shared cultural values. The second group of people are the ones that came when Britain joined the EU. And sure, you can say that, oh, it allows you to live in Paris or Barcelona or wherever. But it also allows people from there to live in your country as well, and those people do not share the same values as you. They may be European, but they're not going to have British values automatically just because they can freely travel to your country and live there and work there. And also, I'm pretty sure that the majority of people coming to Britain right now are not coming for their music scene.
But it's only the past 20 years that have seen more people come than go.
Yeah, and I wonder why that is. Now, in all fairness, in the past, well, I guess it's been a little bit more than 20 years, but over that course period of time towards the first part of that was after the Iron Curtain came down. So you had more migrants come from Eastern Europe, which would account for some of that, but now within the past, I'd say 10 years, and maybe I guess 15 on that time scale, the vast majority of migrants are not the ones from Eastern Europe, although I know that there's been some discussion about Polish workers in Britain or other. I don't know. I'm American. I only hear kind of the French stories on that. But certainly within the past 10 years, the main sources of migration have been not from Eastern Europe and not from Europe at all. They've been from other places like Africa and the Middle East.
Even so, you can't open a paper without hearing someone giving it large about immigration.
Okay, look at this picture that they decided to put up. The 5 protest signs. Let's try to figure out what they mean by these. The first one is, did you hear the council's going to ban Christmas? The fact of the matter is that there have been city councils and local governments here in America that have tried to go so far as to get rid of the word Christmas or symbols associated with it. So I'm sure in Britain, which is worse than even America is dealing with right now, that's just probably true. The second one is you should see the queue at our local GP, which is the doctor. In Britain, a country with their National Health Service, adding mass migration or mass immigration onto this probably doesn't help state-run healthcare. And I think they were already having problems before migration. Certainly, migration's not helped on that. There's not enough housing for everyone. That's also probably very true in a country like Britain that provides a lot of housing via the state. They're taking all our jobs. That is also quite true. If actually, especially in the past few years where the state's been trying to encourage mass migration to the country and they don't have the economy to do it, especially in certain areas of Britain where the economy has been hit very hard, especially in like the manufacturing sector. And then the last line is, I'm really not happy about this, which, well, there probably are quite a few Britons that aren't happy about it. We're unhappy about it here in America, and I can only imagine how Britons feel about it, coming from an area that doesn't even border them.
Immigration has become quite a hot topic in the UK. Has anti-immigration become a British characteristic? And if so, why? Why has sentiment changed so much?
Essentially, the criticism is that there's too many immigrants coming to this country demanding services that are free at the point of use, such as the NHS, such as schools, and we don't have the money to support that.
Well, at least now we're to the debate part of this. So the very first thing is, anti-immigration does not have to be a British sentiment or a national sentiment. It can just be an attitude taken towards an event in time. It doesn't have to be something that defines your country. Although I'm sure to these people, they would consider it to be, a national characteristic for some reason. You don't want your country's borders to be wide open to everyone on Earth. Second thing is, guy sitting on the couch is quite right. Those are definitely the common criticisms of immigration, especially in a country like Britain, which is a largely welfare state that pays for things like schools, doctors, housing, and etc. And when you have a welfare state like that, it doesn't handle immigration well. The third thing is that statistic at the end is probably, I imagine, quite correct. There probably are about 6% of Brits concerned about the pressure that immigration is putting on their country's resources. And that doesn't help that Britain is a welfare state and largely has to pay for those things through taxation and through public services.
When a family is feeling like they're squeezed, like they don't have the money, like they're not being given the same opportunities as other people in life, and then they potentially see other people from different countries coming here and having what they have and maybe more.
A resentment builds up, doesn't it?
People are disenfranchised in this country, and instead of looking at the government, they're blaming immigration.
While she is quite correct that people in the country can feel disenfranchised by immigration, I find it funny that she wants to blame the government for it. Her words, instead of blaming immigration, they should blame the government, but blame the government for what? For encouraging immigration? Or blame the government for not pulling money out of their magic hats to pay for it? I don't understand what she would exactly want to criticize the government for over criticizing immigration. And then the statistic at the end, I also am not completely clear what it means. It says 31% of Brits want to close the borders entirely. I'm not sure if that means close it entirely, completely, like North Korea style, or do they mean just close it off to immigration, probably especially from Europe. I'm not clear on that statistic. If it's just to stop immigration, then that number is actually a little bit low, considering that number is much higher here in America. But if it's to close off the borders completely, not anyone come in, then that number is rather high. I'm not clear on what that statistic is, and, well, they don't provide sources for it.
In the regions where I come from, like, your Middlesbroughs, your Bikers, your Hartlepools, your Sunderland, what you have to bear in mind about those economies, over the past 50 years, they've seen what was once a strong manufacturing industry, whether that be coal mining or shipbuilding, destroyed. Nothing has replaced it. These people have gone from solid jobs where they could feed their family and now just desperately scratching for minimum wage.
He is exactly right. This is what I said earlier. These areas of Britain that had their manufacturing destroyed, like Sunderland, which I know heavily voted for Brexit in the Brexit vote, they've had their economies destroyed, and nothing has come in to replace it. And so the claim that Europe and or Britain needs more immigrants or more migrants coming, quote unquote, replace the jobs that have gone is untrue. Those jobs are not coming back, and even if they did, they wouldn't need migrants to fill them. That's where the claim that we need immigrants from some other place to fill the jobs that we're not filling is completely untrue. That is most certainly a lie, and he is most certainly correct. And the statistic at the end, 38% of people in the UK say immigration has made it harder for British natives to get a job, is completely true. And I'm surprised that only 38% of people say that. I'm surprised that statistic isn't higher, all things considered. Considering that I think here in America, the statistic for people who said that was probably higher. I think it was up in the 40-something% range. I don't completely remember.
I want to be able to have a roof over my head and food in my belly, and I want that for my children. But there's the rhetoric and the narrative around it is fueling a sentiment which I don't think is a British quality. I think it comes from a place of fear.
It does come from a place of fear. She is correct on that account. It does come from a place of fear. However, I do find it funny that she says that I want food in my belly and food for my children, but what other but could come above that? And that kind of highlights where this debate's going here in just a minute or so. The statistics at the end saying that more than half of people surveyed cited immigration as a personal worry is also very correct. I think that's probably what the statistic was here in America too. That's why people are afraid. They're afraid they're going to basically become outcasts in their own country as more immigrants come in, and I can understand why British people don't want that.
If you kind of have grown up and, you know, you knew all your neighbours, you had a bit of a community feel, and all of a sudden that pub that used to regularly serve Newcastle Brown Ale that all your mates lived in, that's become a Polish cafe where you don't really feel as welcome, you don't really feel like that's as much home, and it's not what you used to. Like, I think it's the pace of change that really scares people.
And so now you can see where the debate's going. It's gone from the kind of the hard-hitting stuff about people not having their jobs and not having the resources to feed themselves, their families, or their children. Now we've gone into, oh, well, you're unhappy because the pub down the street is now a Polish cafe. Sure, there may be some people upset about that, but that's definitely not the crux of this issue. And also, I'm going to be really honest here, I'm pretty sure people would be far less unhappy about a Polish cafe than they would be out, say, a mosque being built down the street from them. I'm pretty sure people would be a whole lot less happy about that than their favorite pub becoming a Polish cafe. Of course, this is Britain. I could be wrong on that.
Rather than the anger being directed at a movement of people who are just seeking opportunities and experiences, it should be directed at our government to ask them why they aren't putting money into our NHS, our education system, our housing system.
Same breath though, since like the late 1990s, the non-British population of the UK has more than doubled.
Again, she wants to blame the government for this issue instead of blaming immigration. But the problem is it's the government that's encouraging immigration, but she doesn't want to blame immigration, so she wants to blame the government for, I don't know, not pulling enough money out of the magic black hole of money? That doesn't make sense, and this is where contradictions start to arise in what they want to blame the government for, because it's the government who's encouraging mass immigration to Britain to begin with. So it's interesting that she wants to blame the government for not doing enough to help immigration, but they don't actually want to blame immigration for it. And it's ironic as well that the statistic at the end says that European migrants contribute 34% more in taxes than they receive in benefits. But that's interesting wording for it. European migrant. I'm willing to bet that doesn't include migrants from the Middle East or Africa, because if you just take European migrants, say from Germany or Poland or maybe the Eastern European states, Central European states, they probably do contribute more in taxes than they receive. But I'm willing to bet that doesn't include immigrants that aren't from Europe. And I mean those from Africa or the Middle East.
There's a huge rise of people going towards EDL or Britain First, you know, and reinforcing these like nationalistic views.
I don't think immigration can be held account for the tension and the rise of EDL and far right on its own. I think the pressure that certain people are facing,
such as less money, less access to resources, schools being really at breaking point, coupled with all these stories about being swamped and floods of immigrants and a lot of uncertainty. I think all of that is fueling extreme views and opinions.
Well, saying you're against immigration most certainly is not an quote-unquote extremist view, although I'm sure them it would be considered that. But she is right on one thing. I don't believe immigration is the sole reason you see groups like the European Defence League, the EDL, forming. I think there are other reasons for that. I mean, the European Union trying to infringe on British sovereignty alone. Of course, I guess EDL isn't specifically British, but still, you get the point. The European Union's attempts to try to destroy cultural significance of the smaller nations within the EU very well could lead to that alone, let alone mass migration from places like Middle East or Africa. I think that immigration is probably a large proportion of why these groups have formed, but I don't think it's the only reason. I think she is right on that, to give her credit.
The history of any country would be very unexciting if you got rid of immigration. I mean, like, I'm drinking our national drink. That is
Tea.
tea. Where do you get that from?
China.
China, I would have said, yeah.
Oh,
All the
okay.
tea in China. India's probably a good one to look at as well, with Vindaloo being the England song. Grime is thriving right now, and grime would not exist without immigration.
Yeah, I mean, even our religion. You know.
Yeah. Whilst we're on religion as well, St. George, it's not English, and, well, the royal family as well.
German?
German.
God, the Premier League would be boring if there wasn't immigration.
Thank you. Oh,
Half
my
my
goodness.
favourite players all from different countries.
If you're wondering, this is the point where it stops being a debate and just becomes a little bit preachy. The fact of the matter is that you don't have to have something from an area to be part of your culture. Tea has come to define British culture much more than it even defines culture in China or Japan or India. It is a strong influence there, but when you say tea, you're very likely think of Britain, and there's a reason for that. It's because Britain is the one that brought tea to the world. If it hadn't been for the British, the rest of the world probably wouldn't be drinking tea. And so this is just a dumb argument that you have to only have something that originated in your own country for it to be part of your culture. And that's just definitively untrue. It's whatever, it doesn't even have to be if you gave the most significance to it. It can just define your culture even if it's not originally from there. But then this kind of goes back to the argument on genetics and culture, and it basically stems from the same thing, is that, well, you can only like tea if you're Chinese. Or at least that would be their claim, is that if you don't accept our view, you can only take like tea if you're Chinese. And the statistic at the end, 44% of people believe that Britain has benefited in many ways from becoming a multicultural society. Now, this is an interesting way to show the statistic, because you're saying 44% of people say that it has benefited them, but on the flip side, you're saying that 56% of people either don't know or disagreed that becoming a multicultural society benefited Britain. That's more than half. More than half of people in your country either don't know or reject the idea that multiculturalism has helped your country. But this is how they chose to show the statistic to try to help back up their point that they're trying to make, is that, oh, multiculturalism is our only way to survive in this country. And hey, look, less than half people agree with us, but we'll show the statistic to make it look good.
Multiculturalism is a powerful tool for survival. Yeah. And possibly the only way to survive. So let's embrace it.
You know, it's empty slogans like that that really make me think that globalism is the new internationalism or the new communism. Diversity is our strength. Multiculturalism is the only way to survive. Empty slogans like this mean nothing, and it certainly means less in a context like this. But, you know, whatever. In any case, hardly a debate, more of a seminar on why we're right and you're wrong. In any case, another beautiful piece from the BBC. Thank you all for watching. Special thanks to Rational Outlaw for letting me do a guest video on his channel, and special thanks to the Iconoclast for pointing out this wonderful debate clip from the BBC, and I chose to do a video on it and do my own viewpoints on it as well. So thank you all for watching. Have a great day.